Business is simple. It's just not easy. We focus on three things to help you run and grow your business more easily: talent, sales, and how to scale. This is the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. Everyone, Bryan Whittington with this episode of the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. Geez, can't even speak today. And that's because I'm so excited. I got Jordan Crawford on. Not only does he have an easy name to pronounce, thank heavens, because I can't even say the name of our podcast, but he's a wallflower. So, I'll have to draw it out of him a little bit. But this should be a great show. We're going to talk about, so by the way, Jordan has he's a co-founder of a place called Blueprint. We're going to talk about outbound systems, creating outbound systems today. So he has some really cool tactics that I've not heard of before. So I'm geeked to find out myself. So with that said, welcome to the show, Jordan.
Hi, thanks for coming. No, I'm just kidding. What if I did this whole thing in ASMR? It's like, we weren't even talking, just like people would listen to go to sleep to this thing. Like, hey, thanks for, the nails on the chalkboard and stuff. So
I'm podcasting a golf event, right?
Yeah. How silly would I make you look though if I just did this whole thing in just like whisper mode? Like, wow, I guess he is a wallflower.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't make it to the podcast, but you're here anyway with your cool hat.
I'm so grateful. Yeah.
So, and it was funny because Jordan, he's on the left coast here, and decides to try to shoot this at 6 o'clock in the morning his time. So it's now 6 p.m. my time, so 7 o'clock my time. So whatever, we're having fun and diving into this. So I guess we'll dive right into this, Jordan, like we do. And I'm going to ask you a real tough question. So yeah. So you've made a couple of videos. I've seen you on LinkedIn. Yeah. You're a co-founder, been doing some business ventures for 9 years in one place and all these other things. Mm-hmm. So why in the world should we listen to you, Jordan, about systemizing our outbound? Because you say it's broken anyway.
Yeah. So I worked at Zinc.com. I was their first hire, YC Winter 14 company in 2016, moved them from 1 to 100 million in GMV in 2 years. And since that time, I've done a bunch of B2B growth stuff for companies like LucidWorks and Purse. And now I'm building these sort of go-to-market systems by Pain, mostly for the outbound channel. With companies like Vouch, Ironclad, Main Street. And Main Street closed $1 million in deals in less than 3 months of my system going live without ever manually typing a single email. And so that's like probably a pretty good reason.
That's a good attention grabber, right?
Yeah.
So nice. Yeah. Well, so let's talk through this then. Now you said, I'll start at a high level. You said that the outbound system for most organizations is broken. What makes you say that? I wholly agree with you, but what makes you say it's broken? How is it broken?
Yeah. So if you think about a lot of the ways that sales reps do outbound today, the idea is the kind of standard idea is more personalization. That's what we need. We need to talk about that Jordan likes cantaloupes. That should be our opener. It's like Jordan said and now there are tools that are going to scrape this podcast. For sure, I'm going to get an email about how much I like cantaloupes, for sure, because some AI is going to pull this transcript and then start the email that way. But I think that the problem is that we need to find where the signal is from the noise. And sales reps have a hard challenge, which is the organization has done all it can to set them up for failure. And then it turns the treadmill onto 10 and it gives them about a 5-minute warm up before it puts them on the treadmill. And what happens is, after month 1, they're like, why are you falling on your face? And this is why tools like Gong are so successful, because really it's what the sales reps already know, is that they are not prepared to have conversations with your market. They don't know who your customers are. They don't know why they bought. This idea of a challenger sale, good luck finding an SDR that can do that. And once they can, they get promoted to AEs, right? And so it's just
by the way, that's where they forget how to do the challenger sale once they get promoted to the AE.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Like you do the work for me. I've already been there. Yeah. So I think that the problem is that, people are throwing bodies at this problem and we just need better ideas. And I think that so this is one of the reasons why I'm building software to solve this problem. And the way that I think about this is, how do you identify who needs you the most? And company data has now become cheap enough. It's just starting to happen where you can score your TAM by pain, where you can start to define heuristics about which companies you should go after and why. And to give you, and you know, the way that a lot of people talk about this is the raised money. Like, the best version of this that most people think about is like, hey, I saw you raise money. I like money. Can I have your money? That's like what a lot of this looks like. And sales reps are trying things like, you know, I saw you're into the Dodgers and I like the Dodgers. And so I just think what we need instead is, why does this company need you now? What is it about their current circumstance that makes them need you now? And how do you find that at scale? And the effort of finding it at scale also tells you what to say. So, like, for example, in my product, we're scraping job descriptions. So we have a huge list, almost 1 million jobs in our database of companies that are hiring for a variety of different roles. And let's talk specifically about how one might first find pain in a job description. Well, you know, before this kicked off, we were talking about Gong, you know, the sales intelligence tool that you can have that joins your meetings and tells you how you shouldn't be talking as much as I'm talking. So Gong would smack me on this score. So what Gong really cares about when it's like, who is Gong's ICP? Well, their real ICP is who has a long, complex, difficult sales cycle where a lot is riding on the line, right? And you can imagine the places in which you need training the most are when you're scaling out your sales team, right? So we know that from hires, right? So we know how many sales reps they're hiring, but there's a lot more intelligence that exists inside the job description that you can systemize and then speak to. And so, for example, a category that you might consider is like, who's selling into serious accounts, right? If you know they're selling into the Fortune 100 or Fortune 500, that sales cycle is not 2 months. That sales cycle is 2 years. And so you can't have one of your sales reps say, oh, sure, of course we'll have that. That's a serious problem if you're selling into a super large organization. So you can structure that into serious accounts, words like enterprise, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, maybe like they talk about the deal volume, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, right? Selling to serious people. So you look for words like CXO, C-suite, VP, right, in the job description. So now you kind of know serious accounts, serious people. Do they have a global sales organization? So do they have folks in EMEA, APAC? Are they talking about different languages, right? So, you know, that can indicate something that they have sort of a variety of different needs in different areas of the globe, right? You could look at things like languages. So do they talk about proficiency in other languages, right? Suddenly now you're starting to get this really rich, structured picture of a sales organization. And all you have to do is categorize that, and then you can message against those pain categories. So an outbound email from Gong in this system might say, hey, Jordan, I took a look at your 78 sales roles that you've hired in the last 3 months. And it seems like you have a very complex sales cycle, that you're selling into the C-suite, you're selling to Fortune 500 companies, that you're hiring folks in a variety of different markets, and that your average deals are over 100K. What is the cost of one of your sales reps saying something wrong to the Fortune 100? And leave it at that. And there's your email. It's programmatic, it's structured, it can be done at scale, and it's not about the cantaloupe. It's not about the sports team that you went to. You don't have to pay people. It's not because you raised a bunch of money. It's actually structured information about problems that your business is probably facing.
So that's rather quite brilliant. Now, a couple of questions off of that. I wanted to just let you riff because you were on a roll there. So a couple of questions off of that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make this a sales pitch for your blueprint. However,
No.
this is really rather quite interesting. Does your
Yeah.
blueprint actually do that? I mean, it.
Yeah. So this is what we're doing. We're scraping jobs. We will basically help you. I don't want to be a sales pitch either. We'll help you structure all of that noise. So we basically give you an entire dump of all of the job descriptions in one file that match your ICP. So you can figure out how many times is Fortune 100 mentioned, what types of keywords, so you can start to understand how these companies talk about your problem. Like we were working with a company that said, we do contact scoring. And in our 800,000 jobs, not one company talked about contact scoring. People talked about lead scoring a lot, right? So you can imagine if you go to someone and say, we do contact scoring, they're like, what the hell is that? So you want to talk about lead scoring. And when they talk about lead scoring, there's a lot of really rich information around lead scoring. They talk about building a model. They might talk about the tools they're using. So if they say, use Marketo to build lead scoring, suddenly now you understand, oh, I can actually message against Marketo. I saw that you're making a lead scoring model and using Marketo. Did you know Marketo's lead scoring model was built in 1352? It's older than Columbus, and it doesn't do A, B, C, or D. So suddenly you actually can message against that because you have some intelligence about what they're. I shouldn't actually. I don't really know anything about Marketo's lead scoring. It's like I shouldn't like cast aspersions on a very fine product. But I'm just saying that might be a thing that you would do.
So okay, so got it. Now that's interesting. Now if you don't want to tack on technology to it, it still applies. You're just going to have to do this manually. You're going to have to go through all of these different job descriptions, or my guess is in addition to job descriptions, you could probably leverage some other pieces, because I was originally thinking, Jordan, this was going to be like trigger events, but this is more rich than trigger events. This is market intelligence to get that person to go, yes, that's right, and show that you understand, because that's the biggest differentiator. It's not that personalization, it's that you understand them. That's how you build trust, is my sense.
Yeah. Well, the personalization is a siren song, right? Because people talk about like increasing personalization, and I don't know what that means. Does that mean you should send an email like 100% about all the clothes that I wore in the last month on my YouTube videos? Like, very personal, but like it has nothing to do with what I do. And so can you get a reply that way? Yeah. Like, how does it scale? Like, well, maybe with AI, there's tools like Lion.ai and SmartWriter that will like add a sentence there. I don't know. That doesn't feel right to me, because, and whenever I see that now, because I know these tactics, I'm like, what did you like about it? Hey, Jordan, I liked your YouTube video on blah, blah, blah. What did you like about it? Now they got to go. And then I'm going to ask them, the first thing I'm going to ask them is like, did you do that? And whereas I lean into the fact that it's a computer, like in my copy, it's like, hey, like we looked at 150,000 jobs and your company was like the best of those things, for this reason. So, but yeah, it's not just job descriptions just are one place that you can look. There's 1,000 other ways that you can operationalize amazing data. Like one of the plays that we were looking into, it was a little bit too expensive to do, but look at all of your existing happy customers, then go find everyone with your ideal title and figure out if any of them used to work at one of your case studies. So what that looks like is, hey, Bryan, I know that previously, you worked at HubSpot. We work with blah, blah, blah over there, super small world. I know that you're now here, but did you happen to interact with blah and blah who used our software and they said these great things? So you can do that kind of stuff at scale. And there's like 1,000 of those types of plays that you can do with data. That's not just jobs intelligence. Like I'm just one piece of this, of a small puzzle.
Now, with what you're doing, can it help you to hone in on your ICP, or do you have to have your ICP already locked and loaded?
Well, this is the thing that I think that the current system of how we train and hire reps is silly, because no one ever says, here's what the market is. And I've had conversations with, this company that they said, oh, well, go sell this in this way. And I said, okay, but they already have a competing tool that does what you're talking about. And they're like, no, just give them this math calculator that will show how many more leads they'll get. And so they didn't understand the current state of the market. And I think this is a general problem, is like what should happen on day one, a sales rep should get to like sit down with the customer success team, like hear from customers. They should be like forced to read all the case studies, maybe listen to like customer success Gong calls. You can use a service like winter.co to like test your messaging in your market. But instead it's like, here are our white papers, go sell our white papers. And so I think that, yes, you can use this to start to understand how the companies that you target speak. And that's important, because just knowing their language is so helpful. And you can do this on LinkedIn too. Just on LinkedIn, you can search for people that talk about the types of things that you talk about, right? So if like lead scoring is your thing, search for lead scoring in the keyword post, look at folks with a lot of followers and just click follow. And boom, suddenly your LinkedIn feed is all of your ICP that talks about the problems. And you can start to be socialized, in the background to know the language that people use, which I think is a good chunk of the problem, honestly.
Yeah, that's you're hitting in a bunch of different ways here that I wasn't expecting, but this is really rather quite good, for the simple fact we talk about business acumen. If you want that challenger type sales, or if you want the new salesperson is no longer that clad handing, hey, how you doing today, right? The super happy that are on drugs or need drugs, one of the two, right? They have to be those problem solvers to be able to identify the root cause and uncover it. So basically what it seems like you're doing is you're saying, hey, listen, we truly understand you. Here's what the problems we believe you have. How are you dealing with that? And that engages in the conversation, and then boom, you can go right into it, as opposed to this song and dance where you're poking at one another trying to figure out, is there even an opportunity here? I mean, this cuts right to the thick of it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think this has to come from your customers. I mean, the first thing that we do when if we do a consulting engagement with companies is we look at sort of top-down buying moments of pain. So what are the inflection points that your prospects have when they need you now? Like, why are they coming to you now? So we asked the company, like, all right, thinking about all of your existing customers, why did they come to you? And what had changed in their business that they're like, shit, this is really important. And then we do sort of bottoms up, which is now go through your CRM and tell me what the moments each of those existing customers had. And hopefully the two meet up. But that effort alone will start to say, oh, wow, 50% of the people that we sold to came because they were trialing these 5 pieces of software at the same time, because their business, had a huge spike in traffic, or because they just launched a new product, or because they got a new CRO and that person had come from a company that had deployed this in the past, or something like that. So you'll start to identify these moments, and that's the key moment where you can start to put some automation behind what you're doing, because then you're not shooting in the dark. You have some understanding, well, this has worked in 30% of our deals, so you can Pareto principle it. And
so you cannot shortchange that step, right? There is no technology. It is belly to belly or video to video, interviewing your customers to realize what those trigger events were, or what the proverbial broke the camel's back kind of thing that allowed that to happen. Because my guess is a ton of companies, one, don't know what they are. Even if they do know what they are, they likely don't have that identified as a selection item in their CRM that they can start to put that together. Or am I wrong on that? And companies are doing that pretty much, and I'm the only one who isn't.
No. I think that's right. They don't understand who, this is the Clayton Christensen sort of jobs to be done framework, right? That he talks about this is like, just because Clayton Christensen is like 55 to 65, reads the New York Times, doesn't mean like has nothing to do with his buying behavior. So he's hiring your product to accomplish something for him. And so I think that that's like, it's important to have that ICP and buyer persona stuff done, but even more so than that, you really want to figure out like, why are companies coming to you now? And that's like, that's the real important piece to tie back. And you don't have to do it in the way that I said. There's 1,000 ways to crack an egg. And the way that, like, the other way that you could do this is just test. Like, it's not going to be as efficient, but sometimes you don't have enough customers, or sometimes, you know, you don't have that intelligence on a shelf somewhere. It's of course going to be better to start with things that actually worked in the past. But like, who am I to say that if you, you know, if for whatever reason you couldn't have a conversation with your customers, or you didn't want to try it, like, yeah, go to market with some of this stuff and test it. And you don't need to test more than 200 to 500, you know, accounts at a time. And ideally you deploy that across a variety of channels so that you're not channel dependent. And, you know, that's the other key thing here is that, like, we learned this lesson the painful way. We did some growth for a company that sells engineers, and like, it turns out I could write the very best email to every engineer. And it's like, engineers just are not email people. And so it's like, we don't even, like, I won't even work with anyone that sells engineers anymore. And that was like a pretty big, dumb mistake. But like, this is why you shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because you may write the very perfect email and your customers might just not be on email. So you need a framework to be able to test sort of pain, messaging, and channel. You know, that's the key thing here, is that, yeah, that's really important.
Well, I want to get to the system and framework here in a second. Before we jump into that, some of the things that you were talking about, this is I mean, we knew that firmographics were not enough, right? So the firmographics, and then you get into psychographics. This seems to be not a combination of psychographics with trigger events, by knowing your persona. And whenever I say persona, because one of the things that you say is target pain, not persona. And my version, and maybe my language is wrong here, Jordan, is that if you target the persona, then you're targeting the person's perception of that with the emotional compelling reason of why they're going to act to change their behavior, right? What is it that's going to cause them to change behavior? So whenever I say that you're speaking to that persona, or you understand the persona, you're speaking to the reason that they're going to change behavior. So I guess with that said, I mean, is this third party, are you really creating almost like a third party marketing data? But I mean, this seems to be pretty in depth.
Yeah, let me answer two things. So a persona is necessary, but not sufficient. And so I'm not saying that you now throw out the fact that you're going after VPs of marketing and send an email to everyone in the organization because you know the pain. Like, no. Like, and so maybe in that sense, my tagline is a little too cheeky, because you do need the persona. It's important, but the problem is it's just not enough. And so you can't, just because you're a VP of customer support doesn't mean that I know anything about your business, right? Like I know you're a VP of customer support. Great. Well, if you're in the fishing industry and you have 100 employees, like, okay, like suddenly that's starting to flesh out the picture, but it doesn't mean that, and like, now let's say, like, well, how have you grown at all in the last 10 years? Like, no, we've stuck at 100 employees, right? Okay. So you're probably not struggling with as many challenges. Well, what's your website traffic doing? Well, your website traffic has shot up by 100x. Oh, wow. Okay. So someone is very much more interested in fishing now. And now I can start to tease out, okay, well, I understand that your organization hasn't grown, but your customers have grown. So you probably are having like dramatically difficult times with, with thinking about, with operations, the variety of other things, right? Now I know you're hiring. Okay, well, what are you hiring for? I'm hiring for customer success. Oh, okay. So now I know that you need someone to help you manage the fish. So you can start to see, as you layer on different data sources, you change the focus, right? And you get a much clearer picture of your account. And what you're trying to do is crystallize what your customers know, to figure out who in the market has those problems. And so that's the kind of key here. And it just employee count and industry and title. It's just that has nothing to do with anything that's changing in your business. And so you just need to go a couple layers of deep. And usually when you do that analysis and you do it right and you look at those accounts, you're like, yes, these are my ideal accounts. But you didn't get there by picking them. You got there by looking at the pain. And when the accounts came out the other side, you're like, aha, I did get it right. Wow. Like I had a customer say to me the other day, like 30% of the accounts you generate are existing customers. I'm like, pretty good then, right? Like, so that's a good litmus test to know if you got your targeting right. If you close your eyes, pulled your name out of a hat, and some of them are existing customers.
Nice. All right. So how do we take this then and start to build a system around this? Let's pretend that we had to do this old school from a spreadsheet hell. How do we build this out systematically? What would we do?
Well, the first thing here is I'm going to quote Kyle Williams here at brickstack.com. And he would say that you need to extract the mental models from your sales reps. And so I think the way that he might describe this is that you need to understand how they're targeting today. And so that's one piece of the puzzle is what are they doing not at scale, and figure out what that looks like at scale. The second piece is to, again, chat with your customers that have a good understanding about the problem and challenge them. Why did you hire me? Why now? Why didn't you go with this other competitor? And they're going to start saying really interesting things. And those are going to be really interesting gems, right? It's like, oh, we were using X. And what happened is once Y happened, X was terrible for us, right? Like if you think of poor HubSpot, they're a huge company, but like poor HubSpot, it's like the journey that people go on is like they have HubSpot until they need Salesforce, or at least for the back end CRM. And so, you chat with anyone, and it's like, oh, like you're growing, like you're going to need to switch. At some point, you're going to need to switch. Like that's like the mantra. So it's like, what point? Like when that's when, when you move from 50 to 100 people and your traffic starts scaling and you start to hire these types of people and you have an open rec for these types of roles, and you see that they're trialing a bunch of other types of software on your website, and you notice that there's like on Glassdoor, people are dinging you and you look at G2 reviews and G2 is saying like, this sucks, but their HubSpot integration is great, or like whatever, right? Like it's the sum of those things that really kind of makes for good accounts. But it can't, usually you can't do this in a vacuum. And it's exciting to do it in a vacuum, but it's usually the worst way to do it. And then once you understand that, so best reps, best customers, and sometimes even the founders have a really good sense because they've tried a bunch of things. So like documenting all the other crap that you've tried that didn't work, like avoid that stuff. So you can kind of triangle this and say, okay, well, here are our best ideas. Then you need to figure out, all right, what channels are our customers in? Where do they spend their time? So you can do some surveys there. Emma Moreno has done some really interesting stuff there. It's like, here's some ways to survey your buyers to figure out what channels they're in. So now you've got some channels, you've got some identifiers of moments. Now you need to figure out what data do I need to buy? And so I'm one piece of that puzzle, but there's like another great company called Predict Leads that they're building this. So incredible. They're scraping companies' websites, taking the logos of their customers using AI and figuring out who are their customers. So this would lead to an amazing play. I can be like, hey, Bryan, I saw HelloFresh on your website and they're a customer of ours too. Have they told you about how we work or something, right? So like you can do some trust arbitrage plays there, but once you find the types of problems that your customers are struggling with and those moments, then you need to do some data exploration to figure out what does this look like at scale. And you can start with some outsourcers too to build some basic lists, but that's what this kind of looks like.
So let me unpack a couple of things here. So we identify how the salespeople are targeting today, right? And they're probably not going to have a good answer. So it's your fault, by the way, sales leaders, because you haven't taught them that. But find out how they're doing it today, then get some customer interviews. And you didn't say this, but I know jotted down, record what they say and how they say it and use their language. Don't use your own, right? I think too often we speak jargon instead of speaking what their words are saying. So use their words in their language, put that in your sales emails and your marketing. And then one question that I had is, you said you get some data points and you named a bunch of different data points. What's the minimum number of different data points to get this? Because you keep seeming to, you're just bringing out this holistic, robust picture instead of having this skeleton of, industry and geography and firmographics. I mean, that's the skeleton with maybe a muscle on it. You're putting a whole muscle skeleton on there with a tuxedo and a ball gown, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, you'd probably be kicked out of San Francisco if you wore that here. It's like a hoodie is formal wear. So, no, I mean, I think that this is not the right way to think about it, because if you think about this as sum of evidence, there's no weight to it all. There's no like what's important, what's not. So I'll say this, that there are some pieces of data that are going to be just drastically more useful to you and defining your prospects than others. And so that's what you need to sort of figure out, is like, what are the things that are absolutely critical to understand about the moments for your customers, right? And so if you can do that, and sometimes it's about creating tension, right? So I talk a lot about like ratios. So if you have 1,000 employees and 2 people in your customer support department, and you're getting 1 million hits to your your website, suddenly those 2 things, like tension is there, right? It's like, what, you got one dude, you got Mario in the back office, like doing support by himself. Your traffic is blowing up. It's increasing month over month. You got a huge number of people, and poor Mario has to do everything himself. Like, are you thinking about helping Mario out? So that, there's some pretty deep nuance there, and there's not like a crazy amount of data to be able to run that. But that you can't be, the way that I talk about this sometimes is like, I'm pointing a finger at the moon, and people grab my finger, and I'm like, no, it's the moon. Like, I'm like, look up. And so what I don't want is people leave this conversation like, just deploy 15 tactics at the same time. It's like, no. It's like, this is not tactic stacking. You need to be able to figure out like, what really indicates those moments of pain. How do your customers talk? And then figure out what are the right data points there, because it could be that you just need 2 data points, and 2 are enough because the signal is so strong with those 2 data points.
Got it. Well said. So it's not the amount of data points, it's the quality in call it the point of leverage. How much of a leverage point does that give?
Yeah. And you generally, I mean, the way that we will do it is when we stack this intelligence into keyword groups, and like basically allow you to stack on some of these sentences. The last sentence is usually some insight. So it's therefore, right? And the problem is that no one has a good idea of therefore except you and your customers. So like, for me to be able to say this, and this is true, take a call with me, right? Yeah. That's like not enough, right? It's like, so what? Why does it matter? And so, and this is where you can dovetail nicely into a great case study, where you can say, when these same things happen with a customer, here's the problem that they were solving with. And by the way, they were about to go down your path. Here's a customer that was using Marketo to do their lead scoring, they were in these sort of similar market as you, similar conditions. They spent 6 months arguing, should it be a 75 or a 76? And they got nowhere. And it turns out that sometimes 10s bought, sometimes 80s bought, sometimes 5 bought, and it just didn't help them move the needle at all. And then they used, they used breadcrumbs and blah, blah, blah. That was the customer I was talking about earlier. So that's the kind of narrative that you need, but that has to come from your customers. And then there has, again, that's the layer of insight, right? That's where you can tell a story that they're like, Jordan, what's the insight? No. I don't know what the insight is. All I'm gathering is observations and helping you find the observations. Like, I'm not coming into this thing with saying like, hey, now that you've bought from me, here's your stack of keywords. Now go. Like, no. This is not that. You need to figure out what implications does this have for your existing customers, and how do those implications play out with your leads?
How much does this impact positioning, or how much of this is part of positioning?
Ask the question a different way. I don't understand.
Yeah. So positioning, there's a woman who was on a podcast a while back, I want to say 36, 39, something like that, April Dumford. She wrote a book called Obviously Awesome. And she talks about positioning and how she created a CRM. And you talk about just a noisy space. They created a CRM, and what they found was they positioned it only to those in the financial services sector, because it was really good at relationship management and keeping them for that share of wallet. And so their niche play, their position was to them, and that allowed them to do well in this sea of CRM. So I was thinking that, this might have a good piece or a part of that positioning to know how to position yourself better for a specific segment of the market.
Yeah. And actually, I just did an export for a non-customer that I just like a lot. They're like, I'm not going to buy it. I'm like, let me do you some free work. Yeah, I'm a bad salesman. I'm a good friend though. I did some exploration, and I said, here's what I did. The company is called Clay.Run. It's a really cool sales tool. And it is like kind of no code automation. Right. And so my new friend, Kareem, just joined there, and I said, look, what I did is I looked at our database and I pulled anyone with a sales, marketing, growth, or revenue title where there are keyword groups: low code, no code, automation, systems. And I gave him a single text file of all of those jobs. So it's like, look, you're trying to figure out where you should position yourself. Should you be a sales tool? Should you be a marketing tool? Or should you be a tool for recruiters? Well, I'm going to tell you which groups of titles talk about systems or automation or connections, and who's expecting folks with no code or business folks basically to do things that really kind of require engineering. And so now you can understand both magnitude and the magnitude and amplitude of the problem. So how many people are actively sort of hiring for folks that have an expectation to do some of these low code things, and then how do they talk about the problems? So my guess is that if he finds that there are 10 sales folks and 50 marketing folks and 5,000 recruiters that talk about automation, they're going to start talking about it in certain ways. And he can use that information to say, aha, for me to, now I understand my market a little bit better, how people are thinking about this. And am I the Newton or the iPod or the iPad Pro? And now I know who to go after and where to niche down and what shouldn't I do? Because I don't know, the one thing I've learned in business is that the best thing you can do is stop doing a lot of things. So yeah, it absolutely will help with positioning, because you're not inventing things and testing it out. You're looking at how the market talks and what problems the market has, and then you're making a bet based on data. And so, yeah, it of course can help with positioning in that sense. And language too. You'll have a good understanding of language.
So we do all of this work, and let's be real. I mean, this is a fair amount of work. Is that correct?
Oh my, it's unreal amount of work. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just don't think that this is a silver bullet. And, oh, great, I'm going to do this. Just expect it's going to take you a while to figure this all out. However, it's critical. I don't think there's anything more critical to this. Whenever I grew up in sales, I didn't do this stuff, and I can't tell you how much that hurt me. And it takes you a while to really start to understand it. So now you do all this work, and then how do you start to create this cold email system then? So can you talk to us a little bit about how do we then systemize our cold outreach to leverage all of this work that we've just done?
Yeah. Well, let me first say that I want to address the first thing about the time it takes to do this, and I'm going to start that quick conversation with look at the last 2 years of your business, year of your business. Tell me which channels you've tried systematically that don't work and which messaging you've tried that doesn't work. And my guess is that if you ask a revenue leader today, that they're going to be like, I have no idea. I have no idea what channels we tried, and I have the SDRs are
We've
writing
tried
their own
them all,
messaging.
and they haven't any of none
Yeah,
of them
yeah, yeah. That's exactly. We've tried everything and it hasn't worked. Do you have any better ideas? And so I had a great conversation with the folks at Alice, and I'm like, who churns? He's like, the people that come to Alice and are like, if I just had this one great channel, and if I could just send them a physical package, they'll respond. It's like attention is not your problem. Like it's not the problem in most cases, right? And so yeah, so you have a lot of sunk cost fallacies. Like if I just have another tactic, so that's the first piece. How you turn this into a system? Well, I think the first thing is you do need to figure out is email the right channel for your customers. You need to survey your customers to know like how often you check email, like is thinking of, and I think one of the questions in Emma's survey was like where do you get your information about new products and services, right? Like that's what you need to know. And so if they're like, oh, Reddit and only Reddit, well then maybe you should be in Reddit. Like, but let's say that like, oh, well, from email, actually, like I get emailed all the time. Like I read email newsletters. I'm like a big email fan. Great. Now you have some understanding that it's email. So now that you know that it's email, what this looks like as a system is you're going to need a aggressively good revenue operations team. And when I see things fail, this is like the primary reason why they fail is like, okay, now how do you ingest data and how do you automate it? And they're like, I don't know. so like you need those pieces. And once you have those pieces, the way that this works is generally the data comes in. Most of the data, the way that we do it is we first score the TAM, right? So we actually download all of the domains from a service like harmonic.ai or apollo.io. We'll enrich those domains with just kind of general heuristics about what's important. So in many cases, that's like, what do department sizes look like relative to total employees? What does traffic look like? What kind of industries are they in? Like really sort of, not like basic plus stuff. Then once we have an idea about, okay, well, are we playing in the right sandbox? We've got some portion of the TAM now that's like really good for us. Then what we're doing is we're looking for, we basically take the data, combine the TAM enrichment stuff that we've done with the data that we found at with any kind of moment data, and we'll inject that into usually the top part of the email. And that top part of the email is just a series of observations, usually. And sometimes they're like, this is true, but this is also true. How do you square these two things? Like for us, for example, it's like, oh, I saw that you're hiring your first sales rep and you're asking them to build lead lists. Do you know that's like a fruitless endeavor? Like, don't have them do that. Like we should do that instead. That's not how we talk about it. But then it's like 1, 2, 3. So you've got some evidence, then you've got an insight. And then generally I do things like I like to offer them some value for free. So in some cases, it's like, hey, like we're an expert at this. Do you want us to like come into your business? Like for us, it's like, hey, like happy to do a free go-to-market strategy. I'm eventually going to get to a place where I'm doing outbound with copy and lead list for my leads. So it's like, hey, Bryan, I know that, you do X. Here are people that have X problem. Here is a list for you. Here's copy that I would deploy to them. Like, do you want me to help you automate it? So it's like so meta, but that's like value, right? That's like like you now have an account list. You know why you should reach out to them. Like I've done some go-to-market strategy for you. And so then I try to think about, once I have some evidence about like why you're convinced you should even continue on an email, what can I provide you that is most compelling, that requires the least effort from you? And so I don't ask double-barreled questions. Hey, Bryan, does this sound good to you? Also, do you have 15 minutes and a whale? Will you ship the whale to my house? Let's get 15 minutes. And then also, do you give a shit about what I've said? Like, just tell me all three of those things in one answer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't do any of that stuff. It's just like, did I get it right? Like, that's most of my emails. Like, is this junk? Like, is this junk? And it's okay if it's junk, but like, just tell me. So yeah, that's what it looks
okay.
like.
So, let me try to sum this up. So I was taking notes here.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place.
Yeah,
So we need to find out, where do they go about finding the new products and service? Now, forgive me, I go to Google. I mean, that's what everyone's going to say. I just Google it, or, I go to YouTube and look up something. So what do you say to that, as opposed to maybe an email?
Well, you can look at this from attribution models in your CRM, right? Where do people come from? They may say Google, but they click on an ad, right? And also, like, this is messy, right? Like, I think for you to depend on a single channel is silly. Really, you should be running omni-channel approaches with this data. So, like, for example, when we run this as a system, we'll go grab the lead. We'll give you their LinkedIn profile, so you should follow them on LinkedIn. We'll give you their email, so you should send them a cold email. We'll give you their phone number, so you should call them. We'll give you ad audiences with, say, primer.com, so you can run like ads just at those people. Those ads perform ridiculously well when I say something like, hiring folks across the globe, and also struggling to break through to the C-suite. They're like, oh, that is exactly the problem I have. Like, not just like not the like, congratulations on your recent funding round. Now that you have money, here's my bank account. So just send it on over and we'll be good. So yeah, that's what this looks like.
Yeah. Okay. So you got to find out where they live so you can engage them. And likely that's going to come from your research that you've done. And then the other key piece, and this has gotten more and more important, and I forget the statistics, but having a really good RevOps team that knows how to do good data hygiene, data management, and then how to automate that and segment it. That is amazingly difficult, because too many RevOps people, they don't get the sales side, they don't get the marketing side, they know the coding side and analytics. So get a good RevOps team, then be able to score the TAM with enrichment and heuristics, which, my gosh, we could probably do a whole show on that one. And then get in your email. So the way you systemize this email, and make sure I got this right here, Jordan, is you're going to start off with different observations, do a commercial insight to maybe cause some tension, do a value add offer, one that you can do that's going to show that you could likely do in your sleep, but there's going to be of great value to them, and make it an easy question. It's something like, hey, am I completely all wet on this? And then shut up and allow them to respond.
Yeah, that's what a lot of this looks like. Sometimes it's social proof that I'm talking about a case study. Like I'll test different things as sort of part of the end of this email. And sometimes I'll string out the observations over the course of a whole chain of emails to keep it short. And so, I'll test all sorts of things. I mean, I was having a great conversation with a friend of mine, Sasha, who's the VP of growth at Happy Co. And he's like, we put misspellings in the email. Like, we're like selling to these guys. We're selling to these like local property guys. They're like phone people. And so it's like, hey, Jimbo, did this thing, blah, blah. It's like, and it's just like, it's a, they're like Jimbos, right? And so I shouldn't say that, but like they're these like local guys that are, that are phone people. These are phone people. And so if you send them an email that is just like half a sentence, you throw in some misspellings, you put your number at the end. That's their language, right? Like, that's how they talk. That is the most email that they've ever sent, right? It's like, take a tweet and divide by 6, and that's like most of their emails, right? And so that's how they talk. And so it turns out that like misspellings like work for them. And so that's the kind of insight that you just have to know your customers, and you can test into it. But if you look at a lot of the emails that they're sending to you, like, you'll see that. And so, but yeah, as a general matter, that's kind of what my emails look like. And it's just, it has to be compelling information. And you do have to share something that's like, this is like the thing. The more specific you get, the better. So the more specifically I can talk about you as a company, and how it relates to like an existing customer, and convince you that it's just better, it works better.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll give you one example of this just because I, again, a little bit hear my own voice. One of the things that we did for, say, Primer, when we built a quick strategy for them, is like, we looked, they do these targeted ads that I talked about. So we looked at the ads of the prospects that they were going after. We looked at their commenters, and we looked at the title of their commenters and their country, and we compare that with their case studies. So it's like, so I saw like in one of these, like Gusto is like, Gusto is like a serious company that is selling to serious people. They had one guy's like, you never, some grumpy person on their ad was saying like, this sucks. And I looked at that person, I'm like, he is a solo business of one for the last 20 years. He is not, you're paying to advertise to that person. But I look at on your website and it's like, you're talking to these people that have huge high growth businesses. You paid for that troll to comment on your ad. Like, you paid LinkedIn to get that troll on your ad. Like, why are you doing that? My company allows you to target just the people that actually should be in your market. So you're not paying to advertise these folks. And we would like reference the case study and reference the guy that, that lives in Antarctica, that's worked on McMurdo Station by himself for the last 20 years. I'm like, this is not and that got a 33% positive reply rate.
Yeah, nice. Well, this seems like if you did this, then you just repurpose it for email, for LinkedIn outreach, because once you do it, it's just a matter of repurposing it and then speaking the language of that tribe. So my hey Jimbo, or my whatever that language is. So got it. Jimbo. All right. Now this is a ton of stuff, Jordan. I cannot thank you enough for this. And I still have no idea what in the world you do, because you're going through all of this stuff. I'm like, what in the world do you do? So we're going to get to that in a second. But first, let's talk about, when you see people trying to do this, what are the biggest mistake that people make in trying to systemize their outreach, leveraging this pain instead of the personas, or the pain of the personas, and speaking in that language?
Well, there's a quote here that says, we shape our tools and thereafter our tools shape us. And I think that this is the problem, is that we've got addicted to the data that we have today. We haven't explored other data. And usually that data requires you to be creative about how you use it. Like SimilarWeb has amazing traffic.
You mean we'll have to think?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's not a fair critique, because that's not what I meant. What I meant is, like, you see the data in ZoomInfo and you think this is all that exists. I have to figure out how to use this data that I have been given to go to market. And the answer is like, no, you don't. That's just like one toolkit, and all ZoomInfo can tell you is their name, their address, but they can't tell you that they're into milkshakes. Like, they can't tell you anything else. It's like not what ZoomInfo does. And so we just need to be mindful of like the tools that you have seen in the past and the tools that maybe other folks in the industry use. Like, there is more there. And so we need to like not settle on the fact that these are the kind of the tools that we have, and go a little bit outside the beaten path. And so, but that has to start with, again, like I'm repeating here, it has to start with your customers, and they're going to tell you things that are like weird. They're like, oh, well, it happened like when we moved our office from Berlin to London, and it turns out that Germany, like they won't sell Gouda cheese, and because they don't sell Gouda cheese, then it's like, it's going to be crazy stuff. You're like, that's insane. I didn't even know that was a law. And you're like, yeah, if you like watch for when people sell Gouda cheese, like it'll be weird stuff like that you just cannot predict. And so you need to like ask your customers that, and then you're like, okay, well, we need to monitor. Like I was chatting with a good friend of mine, Alan, at Wormley, and he was like doing a stint as an SDR to learn a little bit more about the role, and he was working in a company that did like liquidation of assets. So like the Chevrons of the world are like, hey, yeah, we bought all these like self-stealing stem bolts and we don't need them. And they're sitting in a warehouse somewhere. And so they report stuff, like they write that down in their Schedule 1K or whatever. I don't know. There's like one of the SEC forms, right? They talk about that. So build a scraper, go monitor that. The second it comes out, understand like, wow, it looks like you wrote off $1.2 billion of self-stealing stem bolts, which is a Star Trek reference. Deep Space Nine, deep cut. So it's like, it looks like you just wrote all that stuff off. Like that, is that sitting in a warehouse somewhere? Like would you want to liquidate it? I've got this other customer over here. So now, like, think about the power of that email. I've found out something that you just wrote off. I know how much you wrote it off for. And I have a customer in mind, and I can send you an email that says, hey, Bryan, I want to buy this thing you just wrote off for 1.2 billion. I got a customer that's going to buy it for 600 million. It's just sitting in a warehouse somewhere. Like, you're paying for the warehouse.
Yeah.
So that's like an example of why, like, you shouldn't be just like thinking about the data. Like, your customers know it. And then you have to look for public data signals that are like either, in some cases direct, and sometimes it's just a proxy for that problem. But I just don't have something in my back pocket that's like super relevant to your business.
Now, what do you think of intent data?
Well, I cannot argue with the results, and there is, and so my customers have had great success with 6sense, right? That they love it. But the problem with that is that, and it begs the question, like most new marketing channels do, where do we go from here? Is that intent data to me is another marketing channel that is opened up. So every time we open up one of these new channels, it pushes the it makes us have to think less, if that makes sense. So it's like, oh, now we have opened up another new channel. Good. I can put off thinking about how to understand my market for another 6 months, because I'll just wait until they get to this bucket. And when they get in this bucket, then I'll market to them. And it works. Like, don't get me wrong, like 6sense is great, but it begs the question, what next? Where do we go from here? And how do we go to a company and describe the problem that they have before they know they have the problem? Yeah. Right? And if you can do that really well, suddenly go-to-market becomes a gigantically wonderful moat for you, because you and everyone else are not just clicking the button on the last bar and the like, who's searching for my keywords? And
that's the thing too, is more and more people get into the intent. It's like throwing blood in the water, and the sharks are coming at you, right there. It's all over the place. Or, Crunchbase puts out that XYZ just got Series A, and then everybody's calling them, like you said, hey, just open up my bank account. It's a lot easier that way. Okay, got it. So what they should do is really just go back and think and interview your customers and make sure that you understand them for the best way. Now, how about for hiring people that know how to do this? If we're looking to build out, should we hire our salespeople that know how to do this? Is it managers that know how to do this, leadership that knows how to do this? I mean, if we're looking to bring this into our organization, who should we start with to develop this?
Oh boy, this is where I'm less of an expert. I'm the guy in the basement that's like doing the crazy stuff. Like I'm the guy that you hire. It's like, we need a guy that's like just like insanely creative and can. One of the guys that I work with on one of my engagements is the train conductor, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so used to him. He's like, we need to get the account execs over here, we need a marketing team over here, and we gotta like connect up the sales force. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what you need to do. And God bless you, because that is not what I do. And so, but you need a train conductor, right? Like, you need someone that's going to say, great, let's like push this data into Salesforce. And now let's figure out how to ingest the data, grab the sort of unique fields here, and then push it out to our channels. And all too often I will find that, like in most of my engagements, I'm like, do this thing scrappy, just like upload that thing to Outreach or SalesLoft, send, a couple hundred emails, see if the thing works. Yeah. But the best version of this is really, all right, ingest the account data in, run programmatic linked ads with, say, Primer, go have your sales reps cold call them, follow them on LinkedIn, like send them a Sendoso package. So like, honestly, I'm the upstream guy. I'm the one that puts the salmon in the river. But then there's got to be a guy that like sets up the cannon and he starts shooting those salmon into 8 different rivers. Like that's so not my area of expertise, but when I have seen it work really well, it's because there's a quarterback, there's a train conductor that can operationalize this in a variety of different channels, and you got a marketing person to run paid ads, and the SDR development manager to be able to do some coordinated SDR plays. Like,
so don't start here. You really want a good sales development team before you
RevOps team.
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys are fighting over an MQL versus an SQL, you've lost the battle. Like, I can't help you. You're in a game of definitional war, not growth. So your goal is to fight marketing and to fight sales and be like, this is an MQL, this is an SAL. Sales doesn't accept this lead. This is a sales qualified lead, but I'm going to wait till I accept it. Like, that's, it's like, no, like, it needs to be about revenue. There needs to be organized in a sort of a chief revenue officer, and you have to have a systems person. Like, so this works best when there's a guy in the basement with me, like hooking up the wires and stuff. And, so to continue the bad analogy, I'm throwing salmon down the basement. He's organizing that in the freezer. So yeah.
And shooting off cannons while they're doing it.
Yeah. He or they, exactly.
So now, what do you see coming down the pike? What's the future hold? What are you going, oh my gosh, or hey, this is awesome?
Well, I envision a world where there are more engineers working on growth than on product. And so that's an insane world. It's like, I guess Peter Thiel has this question, like, what do you believe that's contrarian? I think that, that if you, like, go to market is going to become a moat in the future, and it's not a bolt on. So, like, I think growth is going to be implied in the product in the future, and it has to be, because that will be the bar. So a lot of people talk about this as like product-led growth, but no, I think there's way more interesting things to do here with like network effects or viral effects. I mean, we're going to take all of our data and open source it and categorize pain that way publicly. So instead of like, who is Salesforce? Well, Salesforce is 10 employees, and Salesforce is, they have a tower and people climb the tower eventually. Like that's silly. Like, that's not useful. I'm going to be like, Salesforce is actively struggling with this problem. Here are the problem categories by department. And that's my data operationalized in a go-to-market motion. And so I think that companies will have to think about how is my product default alive, and how does it connect up with the market in a way that drives additional growth. So I think that path forward, especially for B2B companies, is to have more engineers thinking about like distribution, like maybe then product, maybe.
Interesting. Well, I can't thank you enough, Jordan. We've hit our time hard here coming up, and this has been an amazing conversation. So who should reach out to you? How should people reach out to you? And most importantly, why should people reach out to you?
Okay, well, the first thing I'll say is you're an hour and 13 minutes deep. So that's insane. If someone listened to you and I talk for an hour and 13 minutes, I will do a free go-to-market strategy for you. Because, awesome. Because that's some bullshit. No one, I mean, I live with my girlfriend and she's like, 20 minutes is all you got. So thank you. I am so grateful that you haven't, you, the listener, have invested in yourself and your understanding about go-to-market and go-to-market systems. So I'm grateful for you. Who should reach out to me? So the people that I can help the most are really folks that have found product market fit, that are scaling, that know who their customers are, and want to create a sort of a pain-based funnel of accounts. We do it with jobs data. So those are the people that I can help the most. My email is Jordan, Jordan, at blueprintgtm, as in go to market, blueprintgtm.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, LinkedIn/in/Jordan Crawford. That's where I do a lot of my posts. So those are the places to find me. That's my email. And I'm just so grateful that now almost hour and 15 minutes. That's insane. Who does this?
We've never gone this long, so you get the champion award for going the longest. You've never gone this long, but man, you're a wealth of information. I can't thank enough.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, and you know, if I've seen anywhere, I've seen standing on the shoulders of giants. And so this is not, I didn't invent all this in revenue leaders like Kyle Williams, Guillaume that did a bunch of growth at Segment, the team at Gorgeous, they published a lot of their learnings. Like those are folks to go follow and to go understand how they talk about go to market. And in many ways, I'm taking their learnings and applying them to my business, just like I hope you take learnings that you've learned here and apply them to yours.
Well, definitely reach out to Jordan. There's so much here. We can't do a recap because we're an hour and 16 minutes into this. So, hey, thank you so much, Jordan. I really appreciate it. We'll post his information on the link. So definitely reach out to him. Follow him on LinkedIn. You can see he's fairly quiet and, kind of shy. So give him some love out there, would you?
Yeah, follow my ASMR channel on YouTube too. I've got a good one for you.
There you go. All right. Hey, remember, knowledge for knowledge's sake is pointless. It's knowledge for application's sake. Take this, get to know your customers intimately, and go help them, would you? Let's help communities thrive through entrepreneurship. Till next time, see ya.